Hey guys, it's me, cyoubx. Cubing in the past year or so has really stagnated, and part of that is because of the coronavirus, but aside from that, I think when we look at hardware and new cubes, especially for 3x3s, and to be fair, most of this video is going to be talking about 3x3s specifically, it seems like cubing hardware just really isn't going anywhere fast. I think overall, the appeal of cubing, while still growing, has really slowed down in recent years from what I've seen, especially compared to 2017 and 2018, which is when I ironically stopped cubing. I think cubing has really grown very, very slowly in the last couple of years. Not to say that this is a bad thing, there's of course still a lot of developments that have been made. A lot of the online competitions, including the Rubik's Connected stuff, Red Bull, Monkey League, that's all fantastic. But personally, when I look at hardware, which is the stuff that I care about the most, it seems like new cubes and new 3x3s that come out feel really uninspired. And for someone like me who's a collector, it doesn't really pique my interest anymore. Now, many of you have actually noticed this, and I've seen in a lot of comments in previous videos, people have asked me if I think 3x3 hardware has stagnated or actually saturated to the point where we're not really going to see any major improvements ever again because cubes are already so good today. It's hard for anyone to imagine cubes being better 5-10 years from now. I think there will be more improvements in the future that no one has really just thought of yet, but in the time being, it certainly feels like every single cube that comes out is either very incremental or, in fact, worse than things that already exist. And for the speed cubers out there who are watching this video, which actually is a lot of my subscribers, performance-wise, cubes are kind of done. If you take a cube from the last 2 or 3 years, you'll probably get around the same times as you do with something that's top of the line today, like the GAN 11M Pro. Personally, I get the same times on this really cheap Meilong 3M as I do on this really expensive GAN cube. Now, of course, if you're a really fast speed cuber and you're trying to podium or break records or whatever, the small differences between these cubes actually make a really big difference. But for the majority of us, myself included, these are just sort of nice to haves and don't really make a difference in terms of your average times. Essentially, 3x3s are a solved problem. If someone were to pose the question of, can you design a 3x3 puzzle? Initially, 10 years ago, the answer would be yes, but not very well. These days, every manufacturer, short of maybe V-Cubes, can design a cube that can corner cut really well, not pop, feel decent, and look good. And I've sort of hinted at this in previous videos and live streams, but I think the difference these days between different cubes is not the performance, but actually the feel and aesthetics of the cube. For example, I think the 11M Pro is the most aesthetic 3x3 that you can buy. And while it doesn't improve my times, in fact, I get slightly slower times on this cube, there's intrinsic value in having a cube that looks good. Other cubes, like the Tangyan series, feel really, really good. I really like the feel and sound of those cubes, and sometimes if I'm bored or I just want to change things up, I'll use those cubes for those exact reasons. But to be perfectly honest with you, I think having cubes with so many different types of feels and sounds is actually currently sort of the downfall of cubing, at least for 3x3s. Put simply, there are just too many options available, and if you're a new cuber or you're someone trying to buy a new cube, it's really hard to figure out which cubes are worth buying and which ones are not. So how do we address this? There's another hobby that I've been interested in for a long time, since probably around 2010. Mechanical keyboards. And when you take a second to think about it, the similarities between mechanical keyboards and Rubik's Cubes is uncanny. I'll save the similarities for a different video because I think that's kind of an interesting topic in its own right. But the thing I really want to highlight is that while cubing, in my opinion, has sort of stagnated in terms of hardware and new releases, the mechanical keyboard community has been flourishing. You see, keyboards, much like Rubik's Cubes, are a solved problem. Manufacturers know how to design and produce keyboards that can provide inputs into computers. And just like cubing, the actual keyboard you use these days matters very little. You can basically get the same words per minute or typing speed on almost any keyboard. Just to kind of prove a point, for this video I actually printed a really bad keyboard case that I've just fit some random keyboard into, and it's not even attached, right? Like, this is really, really bad. And the space bar, like, look, you can see the actual PCB. And even on this thing, I get about the same typing speeds as I do on something much more expensive. On something like this, which is multiple times more expensive than the other keyboard. And this is built really nice. It has an excellent feel. I don't type any faster on this. But despite having the same performance, obviously, I would prefer to use this thing. because it feels better, it looks better, and that adds intrinsic value to the product. So there's one thing that mechanical keyboard manufacturers and the community have done in order to make the community grow really, really fast. And that's this concept of scarcity or perceived scarcity. I won't go into too many details here, but if you're interested in buying really boutique or niche kind of keyboards, they're really hard to purchase because generally you do a group buy, which is similar to a pre-order. And orders are usually accepted until a certain deadline. So if you don't purchase the product by that deadline, you just won't get the product, or you can buy aftermarket for a markup, but essentially you've missed out on the opportunity to own that product. Now, of course, this would be a horrendous idea for cubing because you don't want cubes to be super expensive. They're generally prone to breaking. People like to get new cubes once in a while. It would just be really expensive and kind of a hot mess. So I'm not saying that cubes should become really expensive and only have these pre-orders or group buys. But this concept of scarcity can still be applied to cubing in different ways. And actually, GAN has already sort of taken a step in that direction. GAN cubes in general are way more expensive than other cubes on the market. And that price makes the product more scarce. There for sure are going to be more people who own cubes like the RS3M 2020 compared to people who own a GAN XS or a GAN 11M Pro. And while the higher price tag doesn't mean the performance is better, you can buy that product knowing that you're part of a smaller group of people who own that same cube. And GAN has actually gone one step further and produced products such as this, which is a limited edition GAN 11M Pro, for a lot more money. And this is similar to the concept of group buys, where once all these products or all these cubes sell out, that's sort of the end of that item. All this to say, if you ignore performance, then if you're a collector or a gearhead like myself, these types of products have a lot of intrinsic value. But the main thing that the mechanical keyboard community has done, and it's sort of the main takeaway of this video, is they've added intrinsic value and scarcity in one other way. And that's by making keyboards a fully customizable experience. For example, this keyboard has a very specific case color, a specific switch that I chose, keycaps that I chose, the lighting effects, even the functions of the buttons, all completely custom. And it's pretty safe to say that this is likely the only keyboard in the world that's built like this. I would highly doubt that there's another keyboard in the world that is built exactly the same way as this one. Keep in mind, this kind of customization is different than something that you get on a Moyu flagship or, again, the 11M Pro. Because while you can change a lot about this cube, like the tensions, the centerpiece travel distance, core magnets, whatever, there are only so many options that you can do, and given how many people have bought this cube, it's very likely that whatever settings you've settled on with this cube has been done by a lot of other people. And again, to be clear, if you only care about performance and the times you get on the cube, then fine, that's great, more power to you. But imagine a world, or a future, where you can pick and choose every single little component about the cube and really make it yours. For example, you can pick the edges that you want, the corners that you want, the type of core, the weight of the core, springs, obviously, different kinds of tensioning systems, and of course, you can still lube it however you want. That kind of customization would be incredible. It'd make cubing really, really fun. Back when I started cubing, around 2008, people would make hybrid cubes. Back then, similar to where we are today, the mechanisms of the cubes were essentially all the same. Today, the pieces are a little bit different from one cube to another, so you can't really interchange the pieces, but back then it was almost identical from cube to cube, so you could just mix and match different pieces from different cubes, different cores, different springs, whatever, and get a product that was truly unique to you. It was just a really fun and creative thing to do. These days, the majority of cubes are even stickerless, so you can't even really change the shades on the puzzles unless you buy a black plastic cube, which stuff like this doesn't even come in. I think what it all boils down to is that cubing in recent years, especially for hardware and 3x3s, is that cubes have been really focused on speed cubing, just the speed cubing part of the entire community. And I think that actually alienates a lot of people who might otherwise be interested in cubing. Believe it or not, there's actually a lot of people who are just into Rubik's Cubes because they like how they look and they think it's kind of a fun toy. They're not really interested in solving it as fast as possible like you or I might be. And to be honest, I don't know that mechanical keyboards are even about typing anymore. To me, mechanical keyboards and building them and customizing them, it's almost more like an art project. Knowing exactly what it took to make this product and how you made it your own is just a really rewarding experience. I think if cubing could follow a similar trend where manufacturers start making either things that are universal across multiple brands or even just within their own brand, just have things that are more customizable, I think it could make cubing a lot more fun and a lot more interesting for people who are not necessarily into the speed cubing aspect of it. I know for me personally, as someone who just likes having cubes on their desks, sometimes as just showpieces or nice things to fiddle around with from time to time, it would make me more vested in the hobby. Let me know what you guys think in the comments below. If you're interested in keyboard stuff, maybe I'll make more keyboard videos in the future, but thanks for watching, and until next time, toodles.